Ashtanga Yoga. So that he is like able to say that I also know the process of Ashtanga Yoga, and he elaborates the process of Ashtanga Yoga. And then again, after elaborating that, he concludes that Bhakti Yoga is the best process. So we will see in 2 chapters, Shukadeva Goswami elaborating Ashtanga Yoga, how a Ashtanga Yogi perfects his life. So that we will see. And then finally he concludes that Bhakti Yoga is the better process. So Ashtanga Yoga, so it is like, if someone is performing yoga, they might know some of these terms. So this Ashtanga Yoga consists of Ashta Anga, right? Ashta means 8. So 8 Angas, 8 Angas. These are like Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara. So in Yama and Niyama, so people control Yama and Niyama are basically do's and don'ts. You do this, you don't do this, because initially to control the mind and all other things, there are so many regulations which will help. So Yama and Niyama are the basic regulations that if you do this, your mind will act favorably. But if you don't do this, if you do the opposite thing, it will create trouble. So therefore, these are all the rules and regulations. There are so many rules and regulations that are mentioned in Ashtanga Yoga process. Patanjali, especially, he elaborated this process in his Patanjali Yoga Sutras. He gives so many lists, like taking bath, rising early. So all those will consist of yamas. And the niyamas means don't harm others, follow the ahimsa, and follow other rules like that. So many yama and niyamas are there. So Bhagavatam doesn't elaborate them, but it gives the principles. So one should follow all these things. And then after following that yama and niyama, like one will start practicing asanas. So asanas are the basic postures which will if one starts doing those asanas, one will be able to steadily able to sit. So because later on he needs to do dharana, he needs to perform dhyana. So for that he needs to sit properly, and for that he needs to practice asana. So all these things will help in even bodily regulations also. So these are all, yeah. And then pranayama. Pranayama is the one which will controlling the life fire, which will strengthen the body, which will improve the health, and it will give a lot of strength to the body. In the 11th canto also, Krishna says that pranayam yamam balam. So if one wants to improve the strength, pranayama will improve their bodily strength. Like in the pranic, when the life air is properly flowing, many diseases can be controlled. So this is pranayama. And then like it consists of different elements like puraka, rechaka, kumbhaka, like exhaling and holding the breath inside, and then after some time coming out, and inhaling and then holding the breath and then releasing. So like that different processes are there, pranayama. So then pratyahara, pratyahara, ahara in one sense it may be food, but ahara in general can refer to the sense objects for all the senses. So like eyes for eyes, the ahara will be the different beautiful objects to see. For ears, different beautiful sounds to hear. So these are all ahara for different senses. So pratyahara means withdrawing the senses from sense gratification. So this is like slowly withdrawing all the senses from sense gratification. So Ashtanga Yogi, this is the 5th step he follows. So it will take all these steps each will take long time to master them. So he will practice for Yama, Nima daily. He will practice daily. Sometime he practice asana, pranayama, and in his daily life he tries to withdraw his senses from sense objects. So then after this pratyahara, like he continuously practices that, then he should practice what is called as dharana. So dharana means meditation. So meditation one will practice. So for meditating, one should have an object of meditation, right? So meditation means we sit, like for that asana, one steady posture is required. That's why he's practicing asana. And while meditating, there should be dharana ashraya. What is called as dharana ashraya means a form or something to meditate upon. So that is called as dharana ashraya. So here the bona fide process, what to meditate, that is being given in Srimad Bhagavatam. So here there are two methods of meditation. One is if a person while meditating, he has like so many desires. So he is like he has like person is like newly starting his meditation and he has a lot of desires yet. So for them, the Dharana Ashraya is suggested as Virat Rupa. So Virat Rupa is a conception of the Supreme Lord, which we can observe in this world. So for example, if we observe this world, there are so many things in this world which we can observe. Like there are like so many planetary systems are there. Sun is moving, moon is moving, and so many mountains, oceans. Like that, we observe in this world so many different phenomena that is happening. So in Virat Rupa, we meditate that all these phenomena in this world corresponds to some particular aspect of the Supreme. So that corresponding meditation is called as Virat Rupa meditation. So we will see that, we will discuss that. And also, but if the while meditating on that particular, for example, if someone sees sun, so sun is, or someone sees moon. So sun and moon are like one can meditate as the eyes of the Supreme Person. So that is like a one kind of meditation. So because ultimately sun is also said to be the coming from the eye of the Supreme Lord. So in that way, he is seeing the phenomena of the material world, what we are observing in our daily life, and he is connecting that to the Supreme Lord. So in that way, when someone meditates on that Supreme Lord, in that connection, his desires will slowly get purified. So after meditating for some time, if we desires are like fairly reduced, so then he can directly meditate on the Supreme Lord in the form of Paramatma, who is sitting in everyone's heart. So therefore, that Dharana Ashraya is called that. Then that when a yogi becomes little advanced, for him the Dharana Ashraya will become Paramatma. So that form of Paramatma is mentioned. So that is how is that is how he practices. So now when that this Paramatma form, the both this Virat Rupa form and Paramatma form, both are being described. So we will briefly discuss what is this Virat Rupa form and what is this Paramatma form, and then we will discuss what will happen after meditating like that. So we are in the sixth step. We are discussing sixth step in Ashtanga Yoga, where when a yogi is meditating, what he should meditate. So one of the meditation that he is recommending is the meditating on the Virat Rupa. So this Virat Rupa meditation is that there are uh, planetary systems. So like we have discussed, there are like 14 planetary systems. 14 planetary systems, I think. Okay. Okay. There are like 14 planetary systems previously we have discussed, like Atala, Sutala, Talatala, Vitala, Rasatala, Patala. So like that, 7 planetary systems, they are there below the planet Earth, and planet Earth is like 8th planet. And above planet Earth, there is Swarga, and there is also in between what is called as Bhuvarloka. And above Swargaloka, there are 4 more lokas: Maharloka, Satyaloka, Tapoloka, and Janaloka. Like that, 4 planetary systems are there. So all these planetary systems, they are like situated one above the other. So one can imagine that Patala to be the feet of the Supreme Lord. So it is like one kind of imagination basically. And then heels and toes of the Supreme Lord is like Talatala planet. And ankles are said to be the Mahatala planets. And his shanks like are said to be the Talatala planets. And then yeah. And then the knees are said to be the Sutala planets. 2 thighs are said to be the Vitala planets. And hips are said to be the Mahatala planets. And the outer space is said to be his navel. So in that way, like when a yogi is contemplating that there are all these planetary systems are explained in Vedic literature. So when he contemplates that all these planetary systems, he imagines that these are situated in the Supreme Lord's different portions in his legs. And he also thinks that his neck, his upper planetary systems. So all this chest is consisting of his Swarga, and the neck is consisting of Maharloka, and his mouth is said to be the Janaloka, and his forehead is said to be the Tapoloka, and the like on top of head, it is this head portion is said to be the Satyaloka, which has like having thousands of heads. So in this way, he will imagine all the planetary systems to be the different bodily limbs of the Supreme Person. And so many Vedic literatures, they talk about different devatas like Indra. So all these devatas can also be thought as the different limbs of this universal form. For example, Indra is said to be the arms of the Supreme Lord. And the 10 directions which are there, like we know east, west, and all these directions, above, below, and all the 8 directions. So all these 10 directions, they are said to be the Lord's ears. This, whatever, this is actually not the actual form of the Lord, but in general, this is like the material phenomena we are seeing, and we are connecting with the Supreme Lord so that we are appreciating the Lord's presence in the material world. So that's how this meditation. So 8 directions can be imagined to be the ears of the Lord, and is the physical sound that we are hearing, that is the Lord's sense of hearing. And Ashwini Kumaras, when one hears about Ashwini Kumara, they can be thought as the nostrils of the Supreme Lord. And then fragrance is his sense of smell. And mouth, so like when we see the fire is said to be the mouth of the Supreme Lord. That's why when we like when we some many people perform yajna, fire sacrifice, so all the ghee and very valuable stuff they offer it to the fire, because fire is considered to be the mouth of the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord accepts these offerings through fire. So very valuable substances like ghee and all those things are offered in that sacrifice, and fire is said to carry that to the different devatas. So fire is said to be the mouth of the Supreme Lord. And like like outer space we see, that is like that may be considering like 2 eyes, and eyeball is like when we see the sun, that we can imagine that yogi can, he will imagine it to be the eyeball. And like like day and night, for the day, like it's like opening of the light. So it like the Supreme Lord is opening his eyelid, and in the night he is like closing his eyelid. So when he's opening his eyelid, it is becoming day, and when he's closing his eyelid, it is becoming dark. So in that way, he is meditating the day and night and sun to be the eyes of the Supreme Lord. And these are also like within that movements of eyebrows, Brahma and all the Supreme Personalities, they all reside. And then when he sees the Varuna, when he hears about Varuna Dev, the controller of water, so that he imagines to be the tongue of the Supreme Lord. So, like, although these are all, maybe these are all referring to the various phenomena of the devatas, all those things. Even in general, in our life, we may not be hearing so much about devatas in our daily life. But if we contemplate on our daily life also, like so many, like as we, I think initially also we discussed this, in our daily life, so many things are happening around us, like sun is rising, moon is rising, and everything that is required for us is being provided. So all these things, if we imagine that, oh, Supreme Lord is providing through all these agents to me, then we are also being thankful to the Lord. For example, sun is rising and we are getting it, especially in the winter season right now. We appreciate the value of sun, right? Like so much cold is there, and unless sun comes, like we feel lot of suffering. And if imagine if sun will not, if sun did not arise one day, if it doesn't arise one day, like temperature already is like very low, it will become very low, and slowly we will not able to survive without sun, right? So we definitely appreciate the value of sun. And so we see the connection of the Supreme Lord in the sun. Oh, sun is the eye of the Supreme Lord. Because of the Supreme Lord, I am getting this sunlight and I am surviving. So therefore, I will be thankful to the Lord. So if we remember like that, we are advancing little bit closer to the Lord. So that is actually this Virat Rupa conception. The yogi, he hears so many in Vedic literature, all these devatas, he sees all these phenomena, and he is connecting everything to the Supreme Lord. So that is his meditation, basically. So, like that, in our day-to-day life also we can meditate. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives lot of phenomena. He says that Rasoham apsu kaunteya, prabha asmi suryayo. Rasoham apsu kaunteya means I am the taste in water. So, for example, any food that we eat, that taste in that food is basically the water component in that food will give us taste. There are different tastes that we experience. So while tasting that, if you remember that, oh, Krishna said, I am the taste in food, taste in water. So whatever taste I am observing, so that taste is actually Krishna. That taste is actually the Supreme Lord. Like that, if we remember the Lord, so then we are moving little bit closer to the Lord. And Prabhasmi Sashi Suryayo. I am the light in sun and moon, Krishna is saying. So that means when we observe sunlight, when we observe moonlight, so sunlight is very nourishing for all the plants and for ourselves. And it is said that moonlight nourishes all the vegetables. So the taste in vegetables and the different nourishment that we get through vegetables is coming from moonlight. So all these sunlight and moonlight is actually coming from Krishna. So he says that Prabhasmi Surya. These are coming from me, like that he says. And he also said, like, Buddhir Buddhimata Masmi, I am the intelligence of all the intelligent. Balam Balavatam Chaham, I am the strength of the people who have strength. So like that, he gives all the phenomena that he is, all these things are coming from me. So this yogi, he is seeing all these things in this material world, and he is imagining that to be the coming from the Supreme Lord. And in that way, he is becoming closer to the Lord, advancing in his yoga. So we can also, while observing the material phenomena, if we can remember the Supreme Lord, so all these things are coming from the Supreme Lord, then we will also get closer to the Lord. So then some more things are mentioned. Vedic hymns are said to be the the cerebral passage in the shira, like the head, the limb connected to the head. They are said to be the Vedic hymns. And the Yama is said to be the jaws of the Supreme Lord, jaws of teeth. So God of death, he is said to be like crushing all the people. So Yama is like said to be the jaws, teeth, who punishes the sinners. He is said to be the teeth of the Supreme Lord. And the affection, mamata, that we see in this world, that is his set of teeth, which appears very nice. And the illusory energy, Maya, which enchants everyone, is said to be the smile of the Supreme Lord. And this whole material creation is said to be the glance of the Supreme Lord. So, and in that way, different ocean, when we see oceans are said to be his waist, and hills and mountains that we see in this world are said to be the Lord's bones, and rivers are like the compared to the veins in the gigantic body. Veins, like in our body, also veins are there where blood flows. Similarly, when we see rivers, that can be imagined to be the veins of the Supreme Lord. And the trees are said to be the heights of his body, and air is his breath. So, and ages, so many years are passing, we are entering new year after new year. So those are all said to be his movements, Supreme Lord's movements. And the three modes act in different ways. So they are like his activities, that can be said. And the clouds, which we say, those are said to be the hairs of the Supreme Lord. And like moon, when we observe the moon, that moon is said to be the Lord's mind. Moon is said to be in general the cause of different changes in this world. In that way we can imagine. So, and Rudra is considered to be the Lord's ego. And different wild animals, they are situated in different portions of the Supreme Lord. Birds, the music of birds, like birds chirping, they can be thought of as the musical sense of the Supreme Lord. And so in this way, and all the Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, so they are represents his musical rhythm. And the like powerful demonic soldiers, they represent the Supreme Lord's power. So even the strength of the demons can be imagined to be the strength of the Supreme Lord. And from the Lord's face, it is said that Brahmanas are said to be the Lord's face, and Kshatriyas, they are considered as the Lord's arms, and Vaishyas are considered as Lord's thighs, and Shudras are considered as the Lord's feet. So everyone is coming from these different portions. So therefore, uh, and Devatas are all situated in different bodily limbs of the Lord. So Devatas, when they are worshipped, it is like worshipping the Supreme Lord's limbs. So in that way, one can imagine. So in this way, the Supreme Lord's Virat Rupa form that a yogi should meditate is given. So in our day-to-day life also, we can also, as much as possible, when we see the material phenomena, if we connect it with the Supreme Lord, we will also be doing, while working only, we will be able to connect with the Lord's different phenomena. So this is like Virat Rupa meditation. So he also describes the super soul meditation, Paramatma meditation. So before that, he kind of says that Karma Kanda process, where in Vedas, they have also given what is called as Karmakanda process. Karmakanda means performing rituals to attain some higher benedictions. So Bhagavatam goes beyond, like Bhagavatam goes beyond even Swarga. So in Swarga, one will be able to enjoy different opulences when one attains. But that when one performs Karmakanda, he will attain that Swarga. So, but he says that Swarga and other things, they are also temporary when one achieves. So therefore, one should not aim for Swarga, one should aim for the supreme destination. And this Virat Rupa meditation that previously he mentioned, Brahma, he gives one proof that Brahmaji, one time when he is about to create this universe, he forgot how to do. So that time he meditated on that Virat Rupa and he gained that intelligence to creation again. So the one meditation that that Brahmaji is given, and then he says that this, yeah, as I mentioned, this like the Swarga and other things that when one will achieve, they are like temporary pleasures because the pleasures will not last long. There in even in Swarga also, they are compared to dreams. So therefore, one should not aspire for even Swarga. So that means even in material enjoyment also, the theme in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam is that although one may enjoy pleasures through senses, but if we can observe for ourselves that all the pleasures that will come through senses are like temporary. So one should aim for permanent happiness. That's the suggestion given by Bhagavatam. So therefore, Shukadeva Goswami is a renunciant. So therefore, he Shukadeva, Parikshit and others like who are about to renounce, for them one need not worry so much about acquiring so many things because you are already on the path of you already renounced. So therefore you should focus on the Supreme Lord. Now you need not worry about all the temporary things. So therefore he says that you need not worry about your sustenance now because there are so many earthly flats available. So therefore you need not worry about cots and beds. Your own arms are there, so you need not worry about pillows. Palms of hands are there, so you need not worry about utensils. So in that way, he is encouraging Parikshit Maharaj, who is renouncing. For them, you need not worry about your sustenance. Nature will provide your sustenance. So therefore, you need not worry about them. And for even yogis who are already renounced, for them, they need not worry about so much the worldly necessities. They should completely focus on meditating on the Supreme Lord. And the nature will provide whatever you require. So rivers will provide the water, mountains will provide the necessary things. Lord, ultimately, the Lord will give protection for one who is surrendered. So therefore, you need not flatter all the people in this world. So like that, he suggests to Parikshit Maharaj and people who are practicing this Ashtanga Yoga because they need to renounce this world and go to forest to practice Ashtanga Yoga. So he is giving all these suggestions. And he gives that he rejects Karma Kanda, one should meditate on the super soul. So for that Dharana Ashraya, as mentioned before, when one is having lot of desires, one will not directly meditate on the Supreme Lord, the Supreme transcendental form of the Lord which resides in the heart. So therefore, for him, the Dharanashraya is mentioned as the Virat Rupa that we have discussed, where he sees the material phenomena and connect that material phenomena with the Supreme Lord. But as he advances in that dharana, his heart is quite purified. So therefore, at that time, he is like quite advanced and he has very less desires in his heart. So therefore, he can meditate on the Paramatma. So therefore, the Paramatma's form is being described, where one can meditate on the super soul. So this Paramatma form is actually the Vishnu form. It actually resides in everyone's heart. So it's not an imagination, it's a real form which yogis meditate, and advanced souls in their realization they will be able to see the presence of the Lord in everyone's heart. So this is the real form. It's not an imaginary form that is being described here. So Paramatma form, it is mentioned that it resides in the heart of everyone's heart. Sorry, it resides in everyone's heart, and it is like a, it's like mentioned that it is like in the size of, like for example, the size of the heart of the living entity. In that say, in that way it resides. And then he has, like he is having 4 hands, and in each 4 hands Shankha Chakra Gadadhara. So this is the form of the Vishnu, that he is holding Shankha Chakra, Sudarshan Chakra, Gada, and lotus flower, and one can meditate. And his beautiful form is like he is having beautiful face, and he's having beautiful smile. His mouth, he's like happily smiling, and his eyes are compared to lotus flowers, and he is wearing yellow garment which is like shining like kadamba flower, and all his limbs of the Supreme Lord, they are all decorated with valuable jewels, which are all made up of gold and other diamonds, studded gold and everything. And he's having a kirita, which is like which is very shining and studded with so much valuable jewels, ratnas, everything. He's having makara kundala earrings, and one should meditate that this Lord is situated in great yogis' heart, and his feet, his lotus feet, are placed in a lotus flower and situated in the great yogis. And like his body is decorated with nice Vaijayanti mala, fresh flowers, and there is a Kaustuba jewel on the neck of the Supreme Lord, and there is a mark called Srivatsa, which is residing on the right side of his chest. So that represents that is actually Lakshmi Devi, who resides there. And his smiling face is very pleasing for everyone. And his hair is curly hair, and it has a like little bluish tint on this Supreme Lord's hair. And the Lord's pastimes are all very magnanimous, and his smiling face will always bestowing benediction. Therefore, one should meditate in that Supreme Lord. Whenever we hear the description of the Supreme Lord, that time also we should, as much as possible, we should try to imagine that form of the Lord, so that while hearing also we are meditating on the Supreme Lord. In that way, we are progressing in our bhakti while hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So in Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami and other sages, they never miss the chance to describe the form of the Lord. Repeatedly, different forms of the Lord are described. So why? Because so that while hearing, while reading, while describing, we are meditating on that form of the Lord, so that our smarana of the Supreme Lord is increasing. So Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. These are the 9 stages. So Vishnu Smarana, while hearing, while describing, we are increasing our Vishnu Smarana. So so that we are progressing on our path of bhakti. So in this way, all his fingers, actually, if we do deity worship in our homes, like in our temples, we do deity worship. So deity worship means what? The deity is represented according to the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is invited in the deity, and we express our devotion by offering all these things, by decorating the Supreme Lord with all the things that are mentioned in the scriptures. So even in deity worship, in our, like it is mentioned that if one performs deity worship, he is completely absorbed in that way, his mind will be purified. So in our homes also, we can if you have some photo of the Lord, we can keep it. Uh, we can keep it, and we offer different things to that photo or the vigraha, so that we treat the and actually when we invite the Lord, in temples and all, the Supreme Lord is like he is invited. There is a process called as installation. So in that installation process, the Supreme Lord is invited to stay there. So actually the Lord descends to these material through material elements, and there we are performing that worship. So basically it is a process of remembering the Lord, and Lord is present to accept our offerings. So the same way that is described here, we will try to decorate the Lord with all these decorations. So it is for Bhakti yogis, the process of deity worship, process of worshipping, seeing the form of the Lord in the photos and meditating, that itself is like practicing this meditation. So for Ashtanga yogis, this is like sixth process, so meditating. For Bhakti yogis, it is the third process, Vishnu Smarana, and also deity worship is also the process. So same, this is also can be considered as the path of bhakti while meditating on the Supreme Lord's form. And then, so one should meditate on this transcendental form of the Lord as much as possible. So one should meditate on this possible as much as possible. And if that is called as dharana, dharana is like said to be the meditating on the complete form of the Lord. So dhyana is said to be the individual limbs when one meditates. So that is said to be the process of dhyana. So dharana is like observing the complete form of the Lord, but dhyana is like complete individual limbs. When one meditate on individual limbs completely absorbed, so that is said to be the dhyana. So one should meditate on individual line, so that till the time mind completely remains in a concentrated state. When it achieves the samadhi, like that one should meditate in the dhyana. But uh, while meditating on each limb, the intelligence and the subtle body will completely get purified. But if a person, he has not yet developed that much purity in his heart, he is not able to meditate on the Lord, then he should meditate on the Virat Rupa, as mentioned previously, while performing his duties. So, like for neophyte yogi, when we starting, for him, the Virat Rupa is Dharanashraya. For advanced yogi, the Dharanashraya is Paramatma, which is described previously. So, in this way, the yogi practices. And then Paramatma yogi, how he advances is that uh, while he is performing Paramatma advanced yogi, he is performing dhyana, limb by limb process. So in that limb by limb process, he is completely absorbed and he reaches the stage of samadhi, where samadhi means is like oblivious to other things and is completely absorbed in the Supreme Lord for some particular amounts of times. So that is like entering into samadhi for some times. So yeah, while he is absorbed in that samadhi, he progresses in his realization, and he wants to achieve he wants to attain liberation. So through that process of samadhi, there is a thing called as Shat Chakra Yoga, where in that yoga he is able to lift his prana from, there are like said to be the 6 chakras in the body, Muladhara chakra and Ajna chakra, Vishuddha chakra. So in the yoga process, these are all explained very elaborately. So he will be able to those prana from his different chakras, and he will be able to go from his Ajna chakra to he will be able to from Brahmarandra, he will be able to break through his Brahmarandra and he will be able to go to the spiritual world. He will achieve liberation. So that is how a person who is meditating will achieve liberation. This is elaborately described in yoga. But a person who is meditating on Virat Rupa, he is also very advanced. He also progresses. So his progress is mentioned in a different path. So this person who is advanced, he advanced reaches the liberation. He attains the Brahma Jyoti of the Lord. But a person who is meditating on Virat Rupa, he may have subtle desires. So all those desires will be fulfilled because he is meditating on the Supreme Lord. So he travels when he gives up his body, he travels through different planetary systems in this material world. So there are said to be different planetary systems like Vaishwanara Loka, Shishumara Loka, Maharloka, Brahmaloka. So all these planetary systems he travels when he gives up his body through yoga process, and his subtle desires will be fulfilled in these different lokas, and he will then after Brahma Loka he pierces the material covering and he goes through different layers that is covering this universal shell. So this universal shell is situated like a globe, and outside this universal shell there are different layers of earth, water, fire, airy and ethery. So he will cross through these layers, earth, water, fiery, airy, ether layers, and his subtle senses, like his sense of smell, will be completely satisfied through when he passes through earth, and his sense of taste is fulfilled when he crosses through this water substance, and his sense of seeing is satisfied while he crosses through fiery layer. His sense of touch will be satisfied when he passes through air, and his sense of hearing the good sounds will be purified. So in this way, he passes through, and all his desires are completely purified, and pieces false ego and Mahatattva and Pradhana. These are the different elements that will come. Slowly we will discuss. These are like little technical terms. And finally, he will also achieve liberation. So like that, two personalities, how they achieve liberation through following this Ashtanga Yoga is described in this way. But if you remember, maybe if in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says about this Ashtanga Yoga to Arjuna, and when Arjuna hears this description of Ashtanga Yoga, he says that, "Oh Krishna, my mind is so restless. Chanchalam hi manah Krishna pramadi balavadrudam. My mind is so restless. It is so obstinate, and it is so strength. I will not be able to control my mind. I think that controlling my mind is even difficult to control than air." So like that Arjuna says, if you remember Arjuna's character, he is a supreme archer and he is most powerful among his in his contemporaries. He is the hero of Mahabharata war, and he himself is saying that to control the mind is very difficult for me. It is like controlling the air. I will not be able to control. So when Arjuna says like that, Krishna says that, yes, I agree with you. Controlling mind is very difficult, but through a certain process and also by regular practice and by renunciation, abhyasena chu vairagya, one will be able to control this mind. And through a suitable process, you will be able to achieve this thing. So means actually Ashtanga Yoga is even difficult for people like Arjuna. So what to speak of us who are all engaged in our worldly duties. So therefore, uh, the process of Ashtanga Yoga is very difficult, and it is also one has to go to forest to practice it, and one has to do all these meditations, which is like very, very difficult. So therefore, the easy process that Krishna starts telling in Bhagavad Gita is Bhakti Yoga, where while doing our own, while we are situated in our uh, day-to-day activities, we can start practicing Bhakti Yoga by simply hearing. So the same thing Shukadeva Goswami is also continuing here, that so all this yogi, what we have described here, he is like very great person, and his destination, what he is achieving, is also great. All these great lokas he is achieving, and he is achieving liberation. But the same thing can be achieved by following the process of bhakti yoga. He says that the Brahmaji, he has studied the Vedas 3 times repeatedly, scrutinizingly, and he concluded that there is no process like there is no process like bhakti yoga which is more auspicious to the people. Nahi atonya shiva panta vishata samshrita viha vasudeve bhagavati bhakti yoga yato bhavet. So there is no other auspicious path compared to bhakti yoga, in which the bhakti towards Lord will attain. So therefore one should always practice this bhakti yoga. Tasmat sarvatma hari sarvatra sarvada Shirotavya Kirtitavya cha Smartavyo Bhagavan Nunam. So therefore, O Raja, O King, one should always sarvatra, everywhere, sarvada, always one should meditate on Hari. One should hear Shrotavya, hear about Hari, Kirtitavya, one should glorify Hari, and Smartavya, one should remember Lord Hari, Bhagavan Nunam. This is the process. So this is sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti means, although we don't have right now attraction for the Lord, but we practice as a sadhana to achieve that attraction towards the Lord. We hear, we chant, we remember the Lord. So in this way, we will attain the Supreme Lord. So what will happen by doing that process by hearing? Then one will attain the Supreme Lord. Nice sloka. पिबन्ति ये भगवत आत्मनः सतां कथामृतं श्रवणपुटेषु संवृतं पुनन्ति ते विषयविदूषिताशयं व्रजन्ति तच्चरणसरोरुहान्तिकम्. पिबन्ति ये भगवत आत्मनः सतां. Pibanti means drinking actually, but here Katamritam, hearing the nectarian topics of the Lord through ears, which is like drinking through ears. So generally we drink through our mouth, but hearing Harikada is said to be the drinking through our ears. So when one hears Harikada, what will happen is Punantite Vishaya Vidushitashayam. Our heart, which is like having so many material desires, that purifies. The hearing process will purify that. And in the end, we will go to the Lord's feet of the Supreme Lord. That is a benediction that we attain. So in this way, the process of bhakti is mentioned. But to whom one should worship? So in order to clarify that, so he says that there are different personalities one can worship to attain different results. So one, in order to attain impersonal Brahmajyoti or attain liberation, like impersonal Brahmajyoti, one can worship Brahma. If one wants powerful senses, he can worship Indra. If one wants good progeny, he can worship Prajapati Daksha. If one wants some good fortune, one can worship Durga Devi. When one wants power, then one can worship Agni Dev. If someone wants money, he can worship Vasus, Vasudevas. If one wants to be recognized as a great hero, he can worship Rudra. And if one wants grains like rice and etc., he can worship Aditi. Or if he wants to go to heavenly planets, one can worship Adityas. If in this world he wants worldly kingdom, he can worship Vishwadevas. And if one wants some fame, one can worship Sadhyas. There are some devatas mentioned. If one wants long span of life, then he can worship Ashwini Kumaras. And if one wants a very strong body, he can worship Mother Earth. And if one wants stability in his post, he can worship the Rodasi. It is mentioned at Devatas. If one wants beauty, one can worship Gandharvas. If one wants some good wife, Apsaras and Urvashi. If one wants control over others, Lord Brahma. And if one wants fame, tangible fame in this world, one can worship the Supreme Lord. And also bank balance, if one can worship Varuna. If one wants learning, vast learning, one can worship the Lord Shiva. And some good marital relationship, if one wants, one can worship Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. So in this way, all these devatas are mentioned. If some particular benefit, if one wants, one can worship different personalities of devatas. But after mentioning this, Shukadeva Goswami, he mentions one nice shloka, very important shloka, where he says that Akama Sarvakamo Va Moksha Kama Udari Yeta Purusham Param. So if one has Akama, if one doesn't have any other desires, or Sarvakama, if one has lot of material desires, like he wants to fulfill all these things, like which is mentioned previously, like all these, like in general, we are all having some of these desires. So Sarvakama is like one who is having desires, or one who has Moksha Kama, like one who is desiring liberation. If he is Udaradi, if he is intelligent or broad-minded, then he should directly worship Supreme Lord, Yajeta Purusham Param. So Supreme Lord means Vishnu, Supreme Lord Vishnu or Krishna. So because all these are devatas are said to be the limbs of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. So if one any of the desires to be fulfilled, instead of worshipping the devatas, one should directly worship the Supreme Lord with Tivrena Bhakti Yogena, means with sincere and serious worship of the Supreme Lord. So then all his desires will be fulfilled by Lord Hari only, to the greater extent. It is mentioned that Lord Hari will fulfill the desires according to what is beneficial for the persons. For example, one may approach some particular devata for a particular desire. Maybe that particular desire may be fulfilled, but there may be other things which he is lacking and he may be still suffering. But if someone starts worshipping the Supreme Lord Hari fulfills those desires in such a way that the person will not hanker for more. And in general, Lord Hari, whenever he fulfills desires, he will fulfill to a very large, greater extent. So, and ultimately, the person, if he continues to worship even after fulfillment of his desires, the Lord purifies his heart and makes him closer, and he gives his own lotus feet so that he will attain higher pleasure, the pleasure of the soul, because ultimately every soul is part and parcel of Lord Hari, Lord Krishna. So therefore he experiences greater pleasure in worshipping. So when he experiences that pleasure, he considers all other pleasures to be very insignificant. So therefore, Bhagavatam, even if one has material desires, it suggests that worship the Supreme Lord Hari. In that way, he will be his desires will be fulfilled more like in one sense, more in quantity. And also the Lord Hari is very careful not to uplift his devotee. So he will be elevated. So in that way, he will not fulfill those desires which will harm that person, and which will elevate that person. In that way, he will handle. So he is like a father. So a child may approach a father and other persons who are like not so much actually taking care. So father will not always fulfill the person's desire, but whatever is beneficial, those desires he will fulfill. But other persons, whatever he is asking, even though that may be harming them, that he may fulfill. So therefore that person may be suffering. So therefore it is always advised to worship the Supreme Lord directly to attain his desires. And akama here refers to persons who doesn't have any desires. That means their only desire is to please the Supreme Lord. So mokshakama is separately mentioned because mokshakama are the persons who are having desire for achieving liberation. So it is said to be the different from akama. So therefore, pure devotees who doesn't have any other desire than to please the Lord are said to be higher than even persons who are having moksha kama, who want to achieve liberation. In that way, that distinction is also made. So the Bhagavatam's recommendation is to worship the Supreme Lord Hari in all whatever desires you have, or whatever things you want to fulfill, or if you don't have any other desires, or if you have strongly want to get out of suffering, anything one can approach the Supreme Lord. So yeah. So therefore, even jnanis take to the process of bhakti and worship the Supreme Lord. So why not other people who are worshipping different devatas? They can also take to the worship of the Supreme Lord. But this worship of the Supreme Lord can only be achieved by the association of devotees. Otherwise, without the association of devotees, this worship of the Supreme Lord cannot start. So therefore, take the association of devotees. Like that also he is suggesting. So yeah, maybe I will stop here. In this way, Bhagavatam is slowly progressing as towards bhakti, towards the Supreme Lord. I'll stop here. If anyone wants to add or anything, anyone want to ask anything, please. Hare Krishna.
Anybody has any questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you everyone for joining on this auspicious occasion of Sankranti. I wish you everyone happy.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So we will
Hare Krishna. Happy Pongal.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada.
Jai. Jai.